Welcome to the first coding challenge of this section, and also in a long time actually. And this one is going to be a big one, and so let's get started right away. And in this challenge, you're going to build a function where am I, which then displays a country on the page, but based only on the GPS coordinates that you provide to the function. Alright? So instead of providing a real country name like Portugal, all you will provide is coordinates of any place on the world, and based on these coordinates, then a country will be rendered just like we have been doing. Alright? And so for that, we are going to use a second API to basically geocode coordinates. And so here are your tasks. So again, create a function where am I, which takes as inputs the latitude and longitude. So coordinates, as you already know, and as always, we have some test data down below. Then the next step, once you got these coordinates, is to do reverse geocoding on these coordinates. And reverse geocoding means to convert coordinates to a meaningful location, for example, a city or a country name. And so the API that we're going to use for that is this one. So go to this URL geocode.xyz, and then here click on API. And so down here you then have the format of the URL that you need to use in order to do reverse geocoding. Alright, so the URL format is simply this one here, but instead of XML, you should use JSON. So that's exactly what we have here. Alright, so to do this, you should use the fetch API, of course, and then also promises, just like we have been doing in the last couple of videos. However, do not use the getJSON function that we created previously. So that would be cheating because it would make this whole challenge too easy. Next, once you have the data, take a look at it, and then using the data, print a message like this here to the console. Then chain a catch method to the end of the promise and log any errors that might occur to the console. Then finally, there's one important thing about this API, which is that it only allows you to make 3 requests per second. So if you reload the page really fast, then you will get an error with the code 403. And this is an error with the request. So it's a little bit like the 404 error that we worked on before, remember? So the fetch function does not reject the promise in this case, and so you basically have to do that manually. And so that is step 5. And so with that, you completed part 1. So part 1 is basically about reverse geocoding, and then in part 2, it's time to use the data that you get from step number 1 to render a country. And so take the relevant attribute from the geocoding API and plug it into the countries API that we have been using. And just like we have been doing, render the country and also catch any errors. And for this one, you can actually even copy the code, so there's no need to type the same code, at least if you're in a hurry. So if you want to write the same code again, of course, that's still great, because that will help your muscle memory to really internalize these concepts. Now, if for any reason, by the time you're watching this course, this API here is no longer working, then please just Google for another reverse geocoding API. So I'm sure there should be another one that you can use. Okay? But anyway, once you have all of this done, then you should test your function with these 3 test data coordinates. So hopefully you can complete this challenge and have some fun along the way. So I designed this one to one more time be fun for you. So go have some fun now, and I see you back here once you're ready. All right, so here I am back, and here goes my solution. So where am I is the function that we're gonna create, and that you hopefully created yourself. And so if your code works perfectly, then there's actually not even a need to watch this video probably to the end. But anyway, let's now take this URL format and then do a fetch request to this URL. So fetch, here let's use a template string, because now here we need to plug in the latitude. And then here after the comma, we need the longitude. All right, then on this we call the then method, and here we get the response. Let's just call it res for now, and then immediately we return res.json, which, remember, will return a new promise, and it is this one which then will get the data, because the data is going to be the resolved value of this promise. Right, so that's nothing new. And so let's just take a look at the data here. All right. So let's reload here. Oh, and of course, I need to call this function indeed. So let's grab these coordinates, give it a save. And so now it actually already worked. All right. So let's open it and let's see what kind of stuff we have here. So we have the city, we have so basically the confidence that this data is correct, which is 90%, which is pretty good. So the country is Germany. And then here we have all kinds of stuff. But what matters is actually the country, at least for part 2, which is going to be to render the country. But for now, the task is to log to the console a string, you are in city and then country. So like in Berlin, Germany. Okay, so let's do that. So you are in, and then data.city, data.country, country like this. And all right. So we are in Berlin, Germany. Let's actually already do this with the other coordinates. So let's see what countries we are in. I actually have no idea. All right. So we get undefined, undefined. And so this is actually the problem that I was mentioning right at the beginning. So, so this one, where the API, so where the API only allows 3 requests per second. And so now we got this error 403. And so indeed, it is exactly this one. All right. And so one more time, the fetch function is not correctly handling this error. So it is not rejecting the promise, even though this clearly is an error. And so, as you already know, we need to now manually do that. So here we need to now return. And just to make sure, let's take a look at the response. And this doesn't always happen. Okay, and so in this case, it actually worked just fine. So one of these here is Cape Town, South Africa. And the other one is Mumbai in India. All right. So let's try to reload again very fast here. And so now we get that error again. Okay. So where is that response? So the one that's associated to 13.381. So that's this one. And so one more time you get that OK is false. So let's use that to our advantage. So if res.ok is false, then throw new error with the error message problem with geocoding. And again, let's actually include the status code here. All right. So here we are throwing a new error. And so we are rejecting this promise that's going to be returned here. But we are, as of now, not catching it anywhere. And so at this point, we would have an unhandled promise rejection. And actually, let me show that to you. So I need to save this a bit faster in order to create the error. So sometimes it's not that easy to catch it. Let's do it really fast here. All right. So now you get uncaught promise, basically. So the error message is already the one that we want, but it should not be uncaught, right? And so indeed, we need to catch any promise rejection. And so let's do that. And all I'm going to do in this case is simply log it to the console as an error. Simply the error dot message. And then I will again like add an emoji here, just so we know that it's our own message. Okay, something is missing here apparently. So here again, we get problem with geocoding. And so now we successfully handled the error and could now do something more meaningful with it if we had to. Like, again, displaying some kind of error message or logging this error in some error tracking application. Now, okay. So I think with this, we actually already completed part 1. So we did 4 and 5 in the opposite order, but that's okay. And so now it's time to use this data to render a country. And so this is essentially what we already did before. So I'm just going to come here and copy that. So let's see where that is. Well, it's even more up there. Or actually, it's not. So actually, I will just copy this part here of the error handling. Oh, and actually I can get all of it. Okay, so let's paste that here then. Let's get rid of these comments. And of course, now here we need to do a new fetch. So return fetch. And then, well, actually I need to go back and get the country as well. So yeah, that's essentially this URL here. Okay. So let's save it. I'm not sure if it's going to work yet. And it doesn't. And that's of course because this country here doesn't exist. So the country that we need is stored in data.country. And so here we are now logging this string just like we were doing before. And then based on that country, we have our next fetch here, which we will then return. And then here we have that part where we handle the error if the country cannot be found. And finally, here then we render that country. But it is not going to be a neighbor. So let's get rid of this part. And up there, we called response simply res. So let's do the same here. And for now, let's test it only with one testing data. So let's see. And now we still get an error, cannot read property 0 of undefined. So where does that come from? And so this stack trace here is once again not really helpful. But I think that I still know the answer. And that is because here we actually needed to take the first element of the array. If I remember correctly. Well, now nothing happened. Oh, but I think I know why. And the reason for that is that previously we had this finally here. So we had this finally which set the countries container opacity back to 1. And as we did that, we removed this from here. So right here. So basically now we should set this back here so that we can be back to using it in the future. And so if I save this now, oh, beautiful. there you have it. And this is really amazing. So just using the GPS coordinates, we can now determine the country that we are in, and then also display it along with a bunch of information about the country here on our page. And all thanks to the power of APIs and also asynchronous JavaScript. So let's now also test with these two. All right. But now here in one of them, we actually got an error with geocoding. And again, the reason for that is that we can only do 3 requests a second. And so sometimes this then doesn't really work. Oh, but now we actually got all 3. Now, this one here for India looks a bit weird. Right. So this one is India, but when we get the data for India, then apparently, because this country also has Indian in its name, this is then going to be the first country that is found. Right? So there's probably multiple countries for India. But yeah, that doesn't really matter here in this case. If you want, you can just use some other coordinates here. All right. But anyway, again, I hope you had some fun. And this was a great use case for how we can actually use multiple APIs in sequence to create a really amazing result like this one.